Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sitting In podcast. This is a conversation with athletes about real life. Today, we are sitting down with Jussi Oksanen. Last name, nailed it?
Oksanen, yeah, it's
Oksanen,
good.
all right. I'm not finished, so I don't know. But yeah, Jussi is an absolute snowboarding legend. The man was one of the early pioneers in backcountry snowboarding. I've seen some rad footage of this dude hucking his snowboard down 60-foot plus cliffs. I think you were an OG. Was it Nagano? It was the 1998 Olympics.
Yep.
Did the halfpipe for snowboard. Super crazy. That was the first time ever, I believe, in the Olympics they even had half-pipe snowboarding. So, super stoked to have Jussi on. I guess I'll pitch it to you and let you introduce yourself in the way that you typically would.
Thanks for having me. My name is Jussi Oksanen. Originally from Finland, grew up there. We just outside of Helsinki, like 20 miles outside of Helsinki, small town. Found skateboarding when I was like 6 years old, and that was my life after that. And then snowboarding came kind of later. I think it was when I was around 10. We had a small little hill. It was 150 vertical feet.
It's a lot of vert, man. You got to lap it 200 times.
And so before that, I was skiing, but you can only get like 4 turns, and then you're at the bottom. And it's like, okay. And then I think it was 89, we saw like somebody snowboarding on a hill, and it was instantly like, what's that? Like, that looks cool. Because we loved skateboarding, but the winters are so long and harsh, like there's just nowhere to skate. So it's like, okay, we're gonna try this thing. And yeah, it was like instant love. And yeah, it was just we had a good little posse, and it was just our life.
So 1989 is, I feel like, because I grew up in the era where stuff like SSX Tricky hit PlayStation 2, and we were just like, snowboarding so sick. And like in 89, did that exist yet? Or was this like, it was not as well known?
So 89
right?
was like early, like to Finland, like that was just kind of when it started coming in.
Okay.
And it wasn't cool yet. It was kind of like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Like, they look funny. And, it was just like, the style was kind of like funky still. It was like that kind of 80s style.
So what drew you to snowboarding?
And then our, because the first time I snowboarded was with a rental board.
Okay.
And I skated goofy, but all the rental boards were regular. And so like the first couple times I just like, that's just the way it was. There was you couldn't go switch.
Yeah.
And then I got my own snowboard, and I was like, I mounted it goofy, and I couldn't go down the mountain. Well, I guess I'm regular. And so ever since, I skateboarded goofy and snowboarded regular.
That's such like an interesting overlap, right?
Yeah, and most people, honestly, like even now, like if I go surfing, like if I haven't surfed for a while, and I'm like, oh, like which foot do I put my leash? Like I'm kind of have to like.
Try them both out and see which one works that day.
Yeah, so it's but yeah, it was a fun era, and I think it was like looking back, I think that was like fondest memories of snowboarding because it was just so pure. Like everything was new. Like every time you go on a hill, you're learning something new, and there's no like commitments, or it was just like our little place to be free. And
did your parents support like board sports? I feel like in the 80s, I don't know, at least in my parents' experience and stuff, and like I think that those like teenage years and that timeline and stuff, they were struggling with like board sports because they were kind of coming into popularity, but there was a weird like stigma associated with board sports. You guys are like rebels and like up to no good, whatever that looks like. But how was it in Finland? It's probably a different experience than in the US.
Yeah, honestly, I think like, at least for me, I had so much energy that I think for my parents, they were just like, all right, thank God these kids out of the house. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like, because it was small town, so it wasn't necessarily seen as like something bad, like as, it was not like bad, but it was just like, the culture was a little bit different here versus like, it was just a small town and you're just playing with this thing. But yeah, there's like my parents, they never got it. They didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And when I played soccer and I quit soccer to play, start just skateboarding and snowboard, they didn't get it. Like, it was just like, what? Why would you do that? Like, you're really good at soccer. And I'm like, he's screaming at me. Like, if I don't show up practice, I don't play. Like, fuck this dude. Like, I want to do my thing. So there was a little bit of that. And then also like, so I turned pro when I was 17.
Okay.
So that was sort of like, I was in the school and then snowboarding, and like that was a weird transition with my family, because like dad's like, oh, what are you doing? Like, he's like, you should be in the school, and I like this thing more. And and it wasn't until like, I think it was like a year later when I was making more money than them combined. Yeah. My dad was like, okay, well,
maybe this is legit,
okay,
bro.
Yeah, maybe this isn't such a bad idea after all. I think it's cool that like the skateboarding has always been this like counterculture thing. And I think that the thing that's cool about when you got into snowboarding is that I feel like snowboarding at that point was like, from what it sounds like, kind of counterculture to this skiing culture. Mm-hmm. It was like the other snow sport, right?
Yeah.
Is snowboarding still kind of counterculture to skiing?
I don't think it's like that anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's really mainstream now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like to your point, like skiing was like kind of boring. Like it was very like, you had rules and you had to do this way, and snowboarding was like, you do whatever you want, just
more the freestyle aspect.
Yeah.
Were your parents skiers?
Not skiers, but they skied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like casually.
Yeah. Like we would go up to Lapland like twice a year, and yeah, they were more into Nordic skiing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you went pro when you were 17. At what point did it was it like straight, was the trajectory like very steep, or was it like, because I know a lot of people who are like pro skaters who live with like 10 other people in a van,
Yeah.
Was it like straight to like, oh, like I've made it? Or was there like a period where you were still kind of slumming it?
Yeah, it's interesting because like obviously it was always a dream. Like once you got better, you start seeing videos and you kind of had your heroes. Like that was sort of like, holy shit, like that would be cool. But it wasn't like, like, could you make a living out of it? Like that's probably not possible. And then it just felt so far out. So like you never thought of that as an option. It was just like I said before, it was just so pure. It was just like purely passion and just, loved it. And then 95, one of my best friends started competing in Finland. And I just had this, it wasn't a fear of competing, but I just didn't like the scene. Like I didn't really care about the competition side of things. And but his dad just took us all over Finland, all these like local contests. And so I just tagged along. So I went the whole season just like, oh yeah, he's doing his contest thing and I'm just riding here. And then it was the season after the first contest of the year. Same thing, went up, and then all of a sudden they just called my name. And I'm like, what the like, I didn't sign up. And so his dad was like, oh, we're fed up with this kid. Like, we know he's good. Like, he's got to
push him down the hill.
So, and at the time, like, it was all halfpipe. And I've ridden halfpipe maybe twice in my life. And so I did that contest, got into finals. I think I ended up like 9th place. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, I've never done this. And I suck at it. And I got 9th. And I was like, okay, like maybe this is something, should give it a go. And so I started competing, ended up winning some contests that year. And then next year I was like competing in Europe, winning some I got second at Junior Worlds. And yes, so it escalated pretty quick. Yeah, it was still like, you're kind of just doing it. Like I didn't have like still like a greater plan or anything like that. But, and then it was a year after, 98, that's when I qualified into the Olympic team.
And it didn't like Halfpipe didn't exist in the Olympics yet until 98, right? That was Nagano,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and that was interesting time because like we talked about the skiing and snowboarding, how it's different cultures. So before Olympics, snowboarding was always under a snowboard federation. So snowboarders ran the whole circuit. But when when snowboarding became part of Olympics, it went under FIS, which is the ski federation. And so prior to the Olympics, we had to start competing in a ski federation halfpipe contest.
Okay.
And it was so bad.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And so like there was sort of this thing, it was like half foot in, half foot out. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is really not cool. Like, they weren't like investing into our sport. So like everything was run a little bit weird. Like the judging was off. Like they didn't put the emphasis in the half pipe. And it was just felt a little like off, you know? And so there was like going into the Olympics, there was just like a weird energy. Like, okay, like I'm stoked to go, but like I don't really care at the same time, which is weird to say because like for most athletes,
the
it's
Olympics
like the biggest
is,
thing. But we're all like, I don't know, like what do you think about this?
That's such an interesting thing. I feel like you see that in a lot of sports. And something I want to talk about too is like, you know, you said you weren't interested in the competition from the beginning. So you're like skating and snowboarding just for the passion of the sport. I feel like that's such an interesting contrast between like a lot of other athletes because maybe their whole idea, like you said, is the Olympics, right? And so now the Olympics are available to you in your sport that you have so much passion around. I feel like a lot of athletes come at a sport with a relationship of like, I want to be a professional. Like if you're a baseball player growing up, going to the MLB, like that sounds so sick. You snowboarding, you're just like, I want to do it and huck sick tricks with like my boys and like have a good time. And you know, it just, so I guess in contrast to other sports, how would you say not being competitive, do you think that was a benefit in some ways? Like it was more natural. So you maybe just did it more like, being passionate about something, I feel like allows you to like take it to another level.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, like I totally know what you're saying because I think a lot of sports now, it gets too serious too soon. You know, like even if it's cycling, like people doing like pretty intense training like early on versus like, hey, maybe do a load of BMX, maybe do mountain biking, maybe do a little bit of this, but it's like it gets structured too quick. And I think, it's easy to get burnout pretty quick too.
Did the availability of it in the Olympics and kind of the competition, did you ever experience that burnout with snowboarding, especially early on when you kind of felt more pressure?
So after the Olympics, I got burnout like from halfpipe. That was pretty much my last time I did halfpipe. So like winding back, I think like there's a couple, when we went to the Olympics, so one of the biggest, like the heroes, like Michael Jordan, like Terry Hawkinson, he decided he's not going to go to Olympics. He like, you know, screw this.
Boycott it kind of.
I'm not going. So this was like a few weeks before, like we were like, and then my buddy was best buddies with him. So we're like, okay, like, let's just go. Let's just see how this is and how this plays out. And we go on the plane. We fly from Helsinki to Tokyo. And we started, you know, drinking some beers, and we instantly see like, okay, like we're like really outsiders here. Like, everybody's like mixing their protein drinks and whatever, and we're like, wow. Like,
well, because you're in the Olympic Village.
Like no, so we're all wearing our uniform and we're flying to Tokyo.
And you're hanging out on the plane drinking beer.
And we're just like drinking beer, just kind of like, we don't know what we're doing. And then one of the guys end up getting pretty smashed, and then he started kind of like, you know, giving a hard time some of the guys, and then the coach just got involved, and it was like a weird thing like from the get-go, you know. And then we got to the village, got checked in, and then the next day was the Olympic ceremony, which is like, you know, big deal. It's
walk in
beautiful. It's amazing. And then So anyways, everybody's wearing their uniforms. We walk into the big stadium, and as soon as we get on the track, my body just rips his Finland jacket on. He was sponsored by Volcom, so I had a giant Volcom stone, just huge Volcom stone, and there's nothing you can do. So you just
you're already in the middle of
live
it.
TV. Like everybody's freaking out, but there's nothing they can do. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, so.
They're like, who brought the snowboarders?
Yeah,
bro?
so then day after, we got kicked out of the village. We stayed in a hotel somewhere, middle of the mountains. So it's like the whole experience was like, wow, like this is just like crazy. Like, what are we even doing here? Are we like?
I can imagine just like a bunch of, honestly, like track cyclists or like, you know, track and field people, which is like the biggest Olympic sport, or like rowers, and they're all just so serious and like ready to just destroy. And you guys are like hanging out, drinking beers in the village, getting kicked out.
But it was actually like,
honestly, sounds more fun.
It was pretty epic because we had a hotel right in the middle of the mountains, and I don't know if you've ever been in Japan, but it snows like crazy.
Okay.
Like it just nukes powder. And
you guys are like, I want to go up there, bro.
On this resort, and we're just like, I was just riding powder all day. I was like, fuck, this is amazing.
So you're like waiting to compete in the half pipe, and you're just out ripping powder. Like this is warm up.
Like you could only practice for like an hour. It was like 2-hour window.
Oh, yes,
you practice, and then you just do nothing. So I was just riding powder, and yeah, the whole thing was so bad. But anyways, I think like. After that experience, like my whole dream was to come to US and do all the backcountry stuff, like filming and shooting and all that stuff. So
wait, where did that dream start? Because like, you know, creativity and stuff is something that I want to get into for sure. And like, that's, I think, where you probably thrived most, marrying the two things, right? Marrying creativity and sport is like really rad in my opinion. And so like the stuff that you've done for the viewers and listeners out there is like a lot of like videography and shooting around backcountry snowboarding, right?
Yeah. So like as a snowboarder, you being filmed, so you're doing all the backcountry stuff, and then the sponsors, like whether it's a Burton movie or whatever, like so you basically work your whole season for a 2-3 minute video part.
Whoa.
And then it comes out in fall, and it's like a big thing. And then there was, when we still had magazines, you'd get like, you know, your shots in the magazines. And, but yeah, I think it was the freedom for sure. Like when you compete like Halfpipe or something like that, it's like very like, you have to, you know, you have your run, like you do X, Y, and Z. And it's very like, kind of feels like tunnel vision versus like doing what we're doing. Like you express yourself, you have your personal style, you do what you want to do. And so that's always something that appealed to me, just that freedom.
You first talked about how when you first got into snowboarding, it felt like it was something that was like super pure, that you were like doing it for like the love of the game. Do you feel like you lost some of that when you went to like go compete? And do you feel like you got some of that back when you kind of like exited this like world of competition and were like, I'm going to start just like focusing on video parts and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. But then you quickly discover that filming part is super professional too.
Yeah.
Like what you see videos like, oh, this is snowboarding. Like what actually goes behind the scenes, it's like you're waking up 4 a.m, you're like, it's work.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think surprised a lot of people. Like when I was coming up, there was probably like 5 other guys that were shooting one of the biggest production company for snowboarding videos. And it's like, I still wanted it so bad, but it weeded out a lot of people because it's just not what you're
It's a grind.
in the end.
Yeah.
Like, and I was maybe a little bit like surprised too. Like, it's like, oh shit, it's not like you just go out there and hit a little pooter and like go home and get drunk. Like it was a little bit of like that, but not as a whole. Like it really is. I became aware that it was like, okay, this is actually job if you want to do this.
Did
like,
you feel
it is fun?
Yeah.
And it was like incredible experience and I loved every bit of it, but it was work at the same time. but it was something that I loved as well. So it didn't feel so much like work necessarily.
Do you feel pressured or like stuck because, you know, you're growing up, you made the decision, you went from skate to snowboard. You said you turned pro at 17. So now you're doing like the pro snowboarding thing and like you've pigeonholed, I don't want to say pigeonholed, but you've like, that is your passion. That is your life. Like your life surrounds that and like you're doing all these things. But as like a pro snowboarder, then you feel pressure now to stick with all that stuff because you had made that decision? Or was there ever like a thought of like doing anything else? Or was it just like, I mean, I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. There's no question about it because I love it so much. I mean, what was the...
Yeah, I was 100% in. I was all in. Like, I loved it. It was...
So there's no question for you. Like,
yeah, and I think it was... And it was such a big dream. Like I said before, it was a dream that I don't think it was like possible, achievable. And then once you got there, yes, it was a little bit different, but it was something that I just loved. For sure. Yeah, I mean, we got to, and so the early, like, it was like 2000, like 99 was the first year I was filming. We're based in Tahoe, and I mean, like, looking back now, like, even the winters were just bonkers. We had so much snow. Like, the seasons where, like, we had that big snow year, not this last season, but the season before.
2 ago, yeah,
like,
that was crazy.
Like that, but better every single winter. It was insane. So like, yes, we did work hard, but like, it was fun. Like, and also like, for me, like looking up to some of these guys that I looked up to, like all of a sudden you're there snowboarding with these guys, like biggest names in the world, you know, seeing some of these guys doing some crazy stuff. And I was lucky with the group that I got in because they were such good mentors as well, like just to kind of show how it's being done, you know? Because there's sort of an art form with that too, like work ethic and kind of just basics, like how what it takes to build a video part and all that stuff. But yeah, so I was very, very fortunate for sure. But as far as like creativity and all that, like what I've noticed pretty early on that like you kind of have to change your program a little bit, like every so often, because if you did just stay with like a same crew, like that starts getting old. So like I've basically was doing the same thing, but sort of like switched crews like every 3 years. Okay. So like then there was like, you're exposed to different people, you go in different places, and it's like kind of refresh, you know, like reboot the program a little bit. Because it, in the end, like you end up going a lot of the same places and it can get stale. So you kind of have to like find ways to get hyped and, you know,
yeah, still maintain the passion, right? Because that's why you want to do it in the first place. You don't want to burn out.
I think about snowboarding as like a pretty young sport. Like, as in, like, it didn't, I feel like, really get big until fairly recently, like in your lifetime. How are you like a first generation of like people who were like filming this backcountry stuff, or were you like a second generation? Like,
yeah, because you said you had mentors that were already doing this thing, but then you're snowboarding with these dudes, so you guys overlapped quite a bit, right? Yeah,
so there was already like, I was maybe like second or third. I mean, there was definitely like the pioneers, like Burton was founded 73.
Okay.
So I think the 70s was still like kind of, you know, I think the bindings, like as you like the way the snowboards are now, that was probably like early 80s. Mm-hmm. And then like a late 80s, like early like 90s, you started having tails so you could go switch. Mm-hmm. And the industry, I think, so as far as like the business side, like it's sort of like the late 90s to like 2007, 6, that was like the biggest. So it was kind of like a build up. And then
so you were right in the thick of it.
And then like the 2000s, that's when it just went like off the chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it went bananas. Yeah, so I was lucky to be part of that.
I mean, dude, right in the sweet spot. And so growing up in Finland, then like, how does access to sports, like snowboarding and skating and stuff like that? Because this is kind of like pre-internet era, so you're getting like VHS, like tapes of people doing rad shit, and like you're popping them in the VCR and watching like on your TV. Yeah. So I guess like from a connection standpoint, how do you even know or understand or like, what does your access look like to that stuff, right? And like knowing that this exists, or was it kind of like a flow that just pushed you there? It sounds like that was more it, but like, are you popping stuff in your VHS? Like that's what I want to do. Or is this something that like you had access to in some way? It sounds like the traveling competition put you in
it was
contact.
super hard access because it was all VHS. And then, like I said, the movies only come once a year, so they come in fall. And then, these tapes are like, I don't know, like $30 or whatever. Like it's hard to get. Like there's like 2 skate shops in Helsinki that might have some, and you can't just buy them, from Amazon.
Were people just like lining up, waiting to get their hands on them, or was
it was
this
just like they might have just bought like 100 copies. So like what you do is like you pull your money, like you buy one, or I buy this, and then you copy the tapes, and then you just distribute the tapes, and then you have like your. Like we would definitely have like tapes worn out style. Like, yeah.
That's so sick.
Yeah. And it's the same with music. It was all like mixtapes.
Yeah.
Like I used to walk like, you make your little mixtapes and.
What kind of music were you listening to?
All hip hop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we only had like, on radio was only one hip hop station that played like once a week. And it was from like 11 to 1 a.m. And like
So
you just like you have your double deck, you put a record, and you record the whole thing, and
you have to be awake to hit record.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so you're waiting like ready to go, dude.
But that's what I'm saying. Like I think like everything like became so big, right? Like like skate video or snowboard video, you wait for it for a year, and then you get it, and you see these names, and you just like watch it over and over, but they're not like reachable. Like they just become kind of these like gods,
figures, yeah.
And like, I've mentioned Terry before, like he was like this mystical figure, like insane.
Comes down out of the mountains.
Yeah, just like he was like, he wouldn't let people to shoot portraits, but you hear stuff, and like, it was a fun era in that way, because I do think like now everything is so accessible that I think it's like good and bad. Like,
yeah, I think it's cool because it's like, we talk a lot about like how the internet's made like people get access to athletes now, where it's like, there are people who have world records now who I can just like, you just pick up your phone and you DM them.
Yeah.
And the thing that's crazy is that like, sometimes they respond.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, has been such a huge shift in like, these guys went to be these, you see this change of like, oh, I see this guy once a year when he drops his tape. And then for the other 364 days a year, he's like, he is the tape that I've had for the last year.
Right.
And now it's like, oh, well, every time you open your phone, like you have access to them now,
Right.
I think it's funny that now things have changed. Like we've seen it in like music. I think we've seen it in like other like forms of content creation, where now it's like, it's this constant pressure to be like putting stuff out.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you got to film this part. You got to film this part. And it's always this kind of content treadmill.
Yeah.
Do you think that's good for snowboarding, or do you like this old format of like, hey, we're going to shoot a video once a year and it's going to come out, and then we have a year to shoot something else?
Yeah, I think it's like you say, I think there's definitely good things to that. Like it's very accessible. You can get knowledge pretty easily now. But as far as like, I think what's happened, I think snowboarding, I think it's across the board, is the quality is not what it used to be, because it's more quantity versus quality.
Yeah, it's like a volume.
So like a lot of I don't really follow much snowboarding anymore, but it feels like it's like Instagram is like such a big avenue. So it's like you constantly have to put stuff out versus you work 4 or 5 months to like this 3-minute video part. Like it'll be the best of you of that season. Like it's a lot of work goes into that. It's like high production. It was just overall, like it was just huge production for that. And now it doesn't really exist anymore. Because I mean, people don't watch necessarily like 45 minutes of snowboarding. It's like 45 seconds. I don't know. That might be a stretch.
That wouldn't be too long.
So I don't know. It's crazy, but I don't know. I do like to that point, like just growing up in an era where there's no cell phones too. Like, I mean, I feel so fortunate to live in that space because I think you're just so present. And what I've like from the days I started filming compared to like the more my end of my career where you're on a trip, everybody's on their phone, like you can't even go on a dinner without like people just being on their phone versus before it was like you hit the road with like 6 dudes.
Yeah.
And you're doing it together. Like you have memories, you create different level of friendships. So I think that's like that I look at it like, oh, I was lucky to be part of that.
Prior to all the noise. Yeah.
Speaking of noise, were you listening to Finnish hip hop or American hip hop?
American hip hop.
Does Finnish hip hop exist?
I think it does now, but no, not back in those days.
Did you have a lot of like American inspiration growing up in Finland, or was it? I mean, because snowboarding. Where did snowboarding really originate? Like, who were the legends? Were they American dudes, or were there like Finnish dudes ripping too?
I think he was from America. I think he was, it came from surfing, skateboarding. But yeah, it was a lot of influence was from here. Like it was music, even like TV, like everything was like very American inspired. And then we learned English from 3rd grade.
Okay.
So it's mandatory Swedish and English. So yeah, it's pretty international.
When you were, I guess, kind of deviating, but not really. So like you grew up skating, and a lot of athletes we talk to, it's like endurance athletics or things like that, and people are naturally competitive. But I feel like in your sport in particular, you have not necessarily risk, but just like there's got to be a switch that you flip, right, to like launch yourself 50 feet in the air or something off a cliff like that. That to me, I'm pretty no fear in a lot of instances, but I feel like that might make me hesitate, and I know hesitation in a lot of things. Like I used to ride dirt bikes, and if you hesitate, you're going to case it. If you hesitate, you're going to jack yourself up. Like, bike racing, same thing. Like in cycling, there are certain times descending. If you hesitate or you don't lean the bike, that's when it actually screws you.
Yeah.
So I guess, have you always been wired in a way that just the risk and the fear doesn't bubble up for you? Or is this something that's like, it took some time, What does that progression look like?
That's a good question. So I think that the way, like, I would say, like, like you have your threshold in cycling.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the same thing in snowboarding. Like once you live and breathe snowboarding and you spend so much time riding, like you're so tuned in with your everything, like your gear, your feet on your board, like your touch is like your threshold is really like high. How you can maneuver your board, and the same is to like filming, like because you don't get there overnight, right? Like it takes years and years to build up to that, but once you walk to like a 50-foot cliff, I could tell in 1 second if that's like no problem or like, no, it's not this one.
Okay.
Like you become so like, yes, there's a lot of risk obviously, but like you become so good at managing that risk that like for somebody looking at it might be like, oh my God, that guy is insane. Like, oh, it's like, in my opinion, I'm taking zero risk.
It's so well calculated and thought out.
Like if there's like 10% chance of risk that I will fuck myself up, no, walking out.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's like, it's just because it is like, it's your career too. Like you don't want to get busted because then it's like you have everything. Contracts and you got to look at things, 5 years ahead. So it's like this game. Yes, you got to be pushing your limits a little bit, but at the same time, like you have to like know, like it's a fine line, but you become very good at like knowing like where's your threshold. Like no, now I'm like no, let's not go there. Let's just stay here, but it's higher than someone else's.
Okay,
and like my threshold in snowboarding now is like 20. Like
compared to what it used to be.
5 feet, no way. Like it's like I'll just stay here and powder,
Yeah,
so it's just like anything. It's like you look at guys who are like, I have friends who are pro surfers, like they do 50-foot waves and it just looks insane. But what they do to get there, they operate the same way. They're not gonna just like, oh, I'm just gonna go ride this wave. They know everything about it. They've been prepping for that one big day for like 15 years, really. So
no one starts on no one should start on a 50-foot cliff, right? You start on a 5-foot cliff and then an 8-foot cliff and then a 10-foot cliff. And all of a sudden you're just like, you're kind of like reestablishing what normal is, right?
And it is interesting because it's like, you look at the shit we used to do, like we all snowmobile, like that's the only way to get out to the mountains. You wake up 4 a.m, you got your 2 snowboards on the snowmobile, extra gas. We go like 70 miles deep in like BC. Like, yeah, we have satellite phone, but like it's pretty like,
just out
like
there.
looking back,
It's
but
remote.
at the time it's like, this is what we do every day. And you become really good at analyzing things. Like you're going on the snow every day. Like as soon as you go in, like something feels weird. Like obviously you read the avalanche reports and all that stuff, but like you're very tuned with the mountains. But we're like slicing like crazy hills on our snowmobile. Like looking back, just to some of that stuff we did was insane. Like we're thinking like, yeah, we know exactly what we're doing. Like there's no risk. But looking back, like, holy crap, like we're like, nobody's gonna come and help us. Like if we like,
you're screwed.
Get in Abby here, like, it's like, see you later. And my wife always like, cause she was like, oh my God, like you see this here, like I haven't heard. It's like, well, we're not, like we're just doing our thing. Like it's not.
You're a professional.
But like,
you're an expert.
yeah, like now I can finally see from a different angle. I'm like, like my threshold is different now. Like I look at back that, like, holy shit, that was crazy.
What was I doing?
But it never felt crazy because that's just what you do.
Do you think that so recently we were talking, there's a time in your life where you're like, all right, it's time to hang it up. And do you think that has influence on it when your threshold suddenly changes? When you see that 50-foot cliff and maybe more of those cliffs are less appealing, is that when you start to realize like, you know what? Maybe it's time. Or is it like, because you could do this hypothetically until you're 60, that would be crazy.
Yeah, I had this weird epiphany. Like it was like before I was pro, there was few pros that was generation above me. And that was like when I was coming in and I saw them kind of still being pro, but they shouldn't.
Okay.
And I kind of saw that struggle, like, just in lots of different ways, the way they went through it. And like, it's like, it just really was imprinted in my head. Like, I was like, I never want to do that. I don't want to go through that. So that was like something that I never like thought that's what I'm going to do. Like, I don't want that, but that's kind of what I ended up doing. Like I went pretty much full gas. I was with Burton, which is like, kind of like specialized in bikes. It's like
it's the biggest
company. So I was there with Burton for 15 years. And so it was 2015 and it was like slowly like kind of started like, just like my body wasn't like bouncing as quick. Like I'd come back from a trip and I'd see a chiropractor, go 5 days, come back and see a chiropractor. And it was actually funny when I retired, I went to see my chiropractor and then he was like, oh, fuck, thank God you quit. Like, I didn't never want to say anything, but like, you were getting pretty fucked up. But I could tell like my body wasn't recovering, and then it was just it was a perfect time. Like the industry was starting to kind of taper off too, and I just decided like that's it.
Just one day. So now I already know the answer to this, but did you have other things that you were working on that had kind of pulled some of your time, resources, and energy? Also, the toll on your body's got to be crazy. Like, I fully understand that. And like, you are probably worn out, but from the entrepreneurial standpoint, were there other things that you were interested in tackling that maybe led you out of the sport?
So I was lucky because I had started a company called Mizu. We do it's like these water bottles.
Yeah.
So we started Mizu 2008. So we've kind of had that going already.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my backup plan. I had hired CEO. So Tim Pogue, my partner, he was running the company. And I did talk to him, like kind of, we always were close because I wanted to be involved with the business, but I wasn't in an active role, obviously, because traveling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was sort of like easy way back in. And it was very like, it was good for me just to, like, there was no like rest day. Like it was like, the day I quit snowboarding was like, I was at the office.
You didn't take 3 months off and just chill.
And it was like, holy shit, like, okay. And I was kind of excited, to be honest. Like, I was stoked to be done. Like, that was such a, like, relief for me. Like, because I also had, like, 2 young kids. So just traveling, like, all that, it was just taxing, like, year after year. And
how'd your wife feel? Like, with 2 young kids, how'd your wife feel about you having,
it was really hard. And when the kids were young, like, we had this conversation with my wife, Zoe. And I told her, like, hey, like, if it's too much, like, I can quit tomorrow. Like, just honestly, like, it's
You're
over.
like, please tell me I can quit because I'm so done. My body hurts.
And I think, like, for her to know that, like, that was out, like, sort of allowed us to, like, push a little bit further. Because my kids were, they were already, like, 8 and 9 when I retired. So, like,
okay. So you've been going at it for a while.
She was like holding the fort, like, when it was, and it was so hard because you don't know, like, I've been in Europe for 2 weeks. I come home and I'm like, I'm going to be home for a week. And it's like, oh, fuck, shit, it's snowing in Alaska. Like, babe, I gotta go. Like, sure. I know I gotta go. Like, and she knew the deal, but still, like, you just feel like such a shit dad because you're like, okay, like, see you later. Like, dad needs to go snowboarding. Like,
how did you respond to those feelings, right? Because at some points I feel like 8 years is quite a while to, like, be putting that pressure on yourself and, like, be traveling so much. So you're obviously bringing in income though, right? Mm-hmm. So this is like, there's a weird pull. You want to be there. You want to be a present dad. You want to do all these things and, like, be involved. And at the same time, it's like, you got to make money to provide so that you can be a good dad. So, like, how did that look for you?
I think it was, like, the communication with my wife, like, knowing, like, hey, we're in this together. Like, if it's too much, it's over.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I was still making good money. So, like, we kind of knew, like, okay, like, if we can just keep doing this is going to help us in the long run. But I think for her, knowing that, like, there was out kind of kept her going. Mm-hmm. But it was hard, but it, like, we were on the same page. It wasn't like, hey, like, I just gotta go. Like, it's like we're in it together.
Did you guys ever have moments where she was like, you, like, came back from a trip extra, you know,
beat to hell,
flapped, and it was like, hey, like, this might be the last one, and then it was like some touch and go.
It was heavy because, like looking back, like, most of the guys that I was filming with, they were like 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
So, like, when I left BC, so basically the way I operated the last eight years, I had truck and the snowmobile in Canada. I'd fly to Vancouver Airport. I had my truck and the snowmobile at the valet in Vancouver Airport.
Oh, just chilling.
I would just go, and like, hey, full gas. Like, I mean, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. The forecast is like 4 days of sun, like really just like strike mission style. And then I would like, we'd film in the morning, like third day or whatever. I'll like pin straight to Vancouver, leave my truck with the snowmobile at the airport, fly home. And all my buddies would go like, right, pow, get drunk, you know. I come home and it's like
dad duty.
So it's like, I'm out. I'm gonna Augusta Spa. Like, good luck. And you're like, you know, beat the shit. You know, you've been working for 4 days. Like everything's hurting, and you're like, okay, like 2 kids.
What do I do?
4 days looking at the weather. Oh yeah, BC snowing again. Okay, well, it's like that juggle was like insane. Like I wish I could see that like in the like time lapse. It would be insane.
Oh, do you feel like it made you just a better person in some ways, having to balance all those things? I mean, like your stress tolerance has to be really high.
Yeah, I mean, that does test you, and it shows you like what you're really capable of. But I think for us, it was just it was testing as the marriage. Obviously, it's hard, but I think that was like such a, like we gone through that, we can do anything type of thing. You know?
It's all easy from there on out.
So, I mean, it was hard, but like you said, you definitely like, you know what you're capable of once you've gone through, you know, it's
kind of the worst of it.
And honestly, like yeah, my situation was different, but like, you know, even if you're a dad just trying to you know, do your ends meet and juggling with kids, and like it's hard, no matter what, you know. Everybody goes through that in some level.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have dads who are probably on a very similar schedule. They're headed to meetings and conferences and, you know, whatever. Yeah. And it's like,
yeah, totally.
You know, it's not, that is not, I think, necessarily like unique to that. It's just the only difference is that instead of going to shareholder meetings, you're going to mountains. So what did like this pivot away from snowboarding into this other life look like? And like, well, what are you doing now also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went to Mizu, basically started like working on the marketing, creative, sort of figure out what our message is, started building Instagram, the visuals.
And Mizu was born sort of out of like, from like the environmental perspective of like, you know, everybody's throwing shit away all the time. And it's like, all right, how do we like reuse, especially like, you know, snowboarding, you're always on the road. You need something that you can hydrate yourself, right?
Yeah, so we were pretty early on that game. So we started 2008, and at the time, I think it was Clean and us in the stainless steel water like bottle, it kind of, that was like
that market.
Yeah, and then Hydro Flask came. I think he was a year or two later.
Okay.
And like looking back, I think we didn't have really a business plan. It was more just like, hey, like how do we reduce the single-use plastic? And you're just like paying out of pocket, you know? So there was no sort of grand plan. So it was kind of winging it. And then like what I realized pretty early on, it was like, you know, you can't, like, I can't do this like the way we should be doing this. Like we started getting pretty big deals as far as like, collabs, and like we're doing bottles for like Nike and Hurley and stuff like that, like pretty big orders. Sick. And like early on, like we had this one thing with Hurley, I think it was US Open Surfing, and we had these bottles that I think it was 10,000 bottles.
God damn.
Yeah, and we had it ordered. They came and every bottle leaked.
Oh no.
So the factories decided that they're gonna like just use thinner stainless steel without saying, and it was like basically like tuna cans. Like, so the bottom, because it's welded in the bottom, it's like a round and then the weld, and they were like too thin, welded shitty. And I was like, oh my God, like that's when I was like, I can't do this. Like,
yeah, you're
I
trying
need some
also,
help.
yeah.
Like I still need to, like, I got kids and I got my snowboarding, and so like that's when I realized like, hey, I need some help, and I got Tim Pogue involved. He started Right Snowboards.
Oh, rad.
And we met through a mutual friend, and so he kind of became like a CEO, and which was really helpful. But yeah, so but that my time with Mizu, like I learned a lot from like so photography is always been part of my life. My mom was a photographer, and I always shot film since I was like 15. So when I was at Mizu, I started shooting a lot of the photos, but I never had shot sort of like commercial or product photography before. It was always lifestyle and traveling and stuff like that. And then I was running our e-commerce and like all that stuff. And all of a sudden I started seeing that conversion. Like, I'm shooting this way. And then like, it's sold $5,000 worth of bottles. And, so that was like really cool experience, kind of learn like what does the content do and how you convert that into sales and just seeing that end of
Were you
photography
shooting
business.
Were you shooting from a commercial lens, or were you shooting from a lifestyle lens with Mizu?
It was both.
Yeah, because I was gonna say from like a branding perspective and like content creation now on my end, I see a lot of, dude, I don't know. My personal opinion is that like the lifestyle shit is what sells. So it's like, cool, feature your product, feature your thing, but people aren't buying that. They're buying the brand and the experience around that. If somebody sees like your bottle, for example, is stainless steel, okay, they see a Hydro Flask, all right? They're the same thing, but like if Mizu's rad and in the mountains with your boys and you're fucking snowboarding, hucking yourself down cliffs, whatever that looks like, and you're shooting that from a lifestyle perspective, that's what I think is the selling point. So were you shooting from the lens of like, look at this product on this white sheet, or were you shooting from the lens of the lifestyle of like, this is what we're about?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're building, like a lifestyle brand. Yeah, so we're kind of like learning how to navigate the brand. Like we wanted to be sort of in action sports, but like outdoors. And like, how do we like play in that space? What does it look like? And it was cool because you're just going out with your friends like, hey, you want to go camping this weekend? And you shoot like Mizu photos, but they were like, that's just how the brand kind of sort of started, like that authentic branded content, whatever you want to.
That's kind of, well, what year was this? It's like still pre-Instagram for the most part?
2015.
Oh, okay, so we're in it.
17, yeah. So like when I went on Mizu, I think we had like 2,000 followers on Instagram.
Okay.
And then in that 2 years, I built it to 55,000, and I think it's still 55,000.
Unless you're making reels, bro, then there's no content.
But yeah, so that's just like and then one thing led to another, and I really fell in love with shooting again, and I got asked to do like this. Shoot for DC shoes, and then that led to another shoot. And while I was still at Mizu, I started kind of doing this passion project type of things. And
like what? Just like
the different shoots, like little small campaigns for other brands. Yeah. And it wasn't for money. Like I'd made money, but it wasn't like, I was just like, I really enjoy this. Like this is fun. And all of a sudden like that kind of led to enough that I was like, okay, like I already have enough that I could do this full time. And I felt like what I did with Mizu was already sort of like what I could do, and we could hire somebody else to kind of take over. And so it was just a kind of a perfect time to like move on and start tipping my toes in this, which is really weird because I never thought that I would be like, doing photography or being commercial photography. And honestly, like, I think it took me like 5 years to like, even like to say that I'm a photographer. Like it felt like so wrong, because I work with photographers who's like being the best in business. They've been doing it for 20 years. Like what am I to say? Like I'm a commercial photographer. Like I've done it really for 3 years. Like,
But at
kind
that
of feels like
3-year mark, you had shot for who? Like you shot some huge campaigns, right? Some pretty big.
Well, I think he was like all of a sudden, like when I was shooting like Kashi and like, you know, big food, like big corporations, like that's when I was like, fuck, I guess I'm
a photographer. Yeah, I guess I can put that in my bio.
But I think it is like that, like when you come from skateboarding or snowboarding, like if you have a shop sponsor, you're not pro. Like you're not pro until like you are well known, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think I just had that same mentality with photography. Like I can't claim like everybody's a photographer if they shoot photos.
Yeah, shooting with
but I don't feel like I can claim that. Like, you know, it's like I'm still learning, you know, like obviously like never stop learning, but I think you just reach to a certain stage where it's like, okay, I guess this is it.
And your mom was a photographer, you said?
Yeah, she was artist, photographer, and worked in the darkroom.
Okay.
So she did all my film.
So you're film developing.
And honestly, like lifestyle way, like I look at some of my old black and white film stuff and I'm like, that's like pretty good. Like there was some
good ideas
pretty
there.
good stuff. Yeah.
Did she develop your old film for you?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool.
And so now it's like, I think it's cool that like we've seen this kind of like this line with a lot of people who we've interviewed so far or like talked to, where it's like, it's people who have found success in one thing and then are able to pivot from like success to success to success. I think it's like always one of these things that like people who are able to like find success in some avenue are able to like bring the pieces of that with. What are the things that like started in snowboarding that followed you into Mizu, that have followed you now into photography, that you feel like are through lines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's kind of cliche, like, oh, follow your passion, you know? It's like, but that's got to be my case.
There's a reason cliches are cliches.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I think what it is, like, it's being pure. Like I said, snowboarding, like I never thought I would earn a penny for it, but like it was just pure, but I work hard. I'm like all in. So like snowboarding, that's how it was. Like it consumed everything in my life, you know, and not saying that photography is the same, but it's like, it's just like if you go all in. And not to say like this, I'm lucky that it worked out the way it did, but I'm not sure that, you know, it could have failed too, you know, but like at least give it a go. Like I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't making living of it, you know? So it's like, I think it's just worth giving it a shot, you know? And it is like, nothing's easy. Like there's times that like, it's hard, right? But just overcome those, and like I had lots of fears in photography. Like I had fear of like working with models and people, and like that was my fear. Like I was like, oh, like, you know, I've shot this campaign for Starbucks, like with 30 people on the set, and like I had some Hollywood people, and I was like, oh my God, like, but all of a sudden you do it, and it worked out great, and.
Now it's
so like it's like you overcome those things, and it's like you every single project, whatever you do, is just it's knowledge, and you just keep building on that, you know.
Yeah, it is.
It is that 50.
It's the 50-foot cliff, right? The Starbucks shooters.
Yeah, you worked your way up to it, and you progressed to get there, and so I think like, you know, creativity is always an interesting thing, and I think it's cool that like you've continued
more
like,
bevs,
more bevs. Let's go. Yeah, man, I think the creativity aspect of everything is like really cool. And when you can pair that with another passion like snowboarding, I think that's also awesome. But, you know, now taking that through into like, I guess, real life and like everything else and continuing to follow that passion, it's like, do you feel, I know you're referencing the all-in thing, do you feel like the all-in mentality is something that is required of an athlete or even just like a successful entrepreneur to really be successful? Because I've seen a lot of people who are maybe 50-50 in some sort of avenue or like passion project or whatever. And it's like with YouTube, it's like with a podcast, something like this. We could come into it. We could have, 2 GoPros sitting here, or like, we could like kind of hang out and talk, like, or you could just be like, yo, we're going to do it right. We're going to go hard. We're going to like do the setup how it is and be aggressive on it and be passionate about it because it's fun. It's cool. It's what we love. I don't know. I guess my thing has always been like, you got to be 110%. It's cliche too, but I think that's truth, man. Like, unless you're willing to commit that to it, it's hard to start something and expect it to be successful. What are your thoughts? Because like you've done that with skate, snowboard, photography.
I think I always had like this thing, like you don't want to look back and feel like you didn't give it all. It didn't work out. Like for instance, like in snowboarding, when I made it, like our group of guys that snowboard, there was like few guys were as good as I was. And then looking back, they're like, they had regrets because they didn't stick with it. Like, oh, fuck, like I should have done that. And you never want to live with that regret where it's like, oh man, like you don't know where you could have gone or where it could have taken you. Like to live with that would suck. You know what I mean? Like if you give it all and it didn't work, well, let's go next. What's next?
Do you think you failed a lot?
Well, I failed like in the macro level a lot, I mean, but that's part of it too. Like you gotta fail. Like that's where you learn. And like my older son, he's 17. He plays pro soccer now in Finland, and he plays with the men's reserve team. And it's the same thing. It's like some of he's doing high school like through
distance learning type thing.
And it's like average, right? Like, and he's a smart kid. Like he could go to any college, all that stuff. And like from someone else's point of view as a parent, you'd be like, you're insane. Like he could go to Princeton or he could go to Stanford and like he's over there, like definitely sacrificing school, but like he's having this chance. And I know he's like the way I was,
passionate.
And it's like, if he did that to go to school, like to live with that, like I didn't know where that could have taken me. Like, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe it does. Who knows? But like, it's like, dude, give it a go. Like you're 17.
Yeah, you got some
like
time,
if it doesn't work out, like you can go to good school. You can get a good education. Like time is now. Like just see what happens,
I feel like I get 2 answers to this question. So a lot of people who I think are people who are like, you have to commit to something 100%. And you ask them about, do you think about failure? You get 2 answers. And the one answer is, no, you can't think about failure because if you think about failure, you're going to fail and you have to just go like you're not going to fail. And then the other answer is, yeah, man, I think about failing all the time. That's why I have to be 100%. Do you feel like you're in one of those 2 camps?
I never think about failing. No.
Yeah.
And I do believe like the energy thing. I think it's like where you put energy, like positive and negative there is powerful, If you just try to see this outcome, it's powerful. But if you focus on a negative, that's powerful too. Like don't give that much thought to those things.
The negatives.
Because they won't help you. Mm-hmm. But
when you, are there times in your life where you've like, so you're kind of saying law of attraction stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you put positive energy out in the world, you're going to see positive results and everything like that. How are there like instances in your life where you thought like you were really like manifesting something in your mind and then that comes to fruition? I mean, I feel like snowboarding probably naturally, you're just like.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, snowboarding for sure. Like it was like something that I was dreaming like so much. Like if you look at my school books, I went to my mom's house. I looked at my school books from when I was basically like, went to school, like, 10 years up. There's nothing but snowboarding, like graffiti and snowboarding, nothing in the school book. I was definitely all in. But it was also interesting. Like when I was young, I had a vision of building a house. Like I had this, like I knew exactly how it was going to be. Like it was like this leveled house, sub-level. It was like a kind of on the hill, had like certain windows. Like it was just like, that's the house. Like it wasn't even like, it was just like, this is it. And I built that house like when I was 23.
Rad.
And like, I didn't like, those are the things like, and the same thing with kids. Like I always knew I had 2 kids. Like, but it wasn't like something that I consumed myself like time, but it was just like, okay, like this is it. Like
That's your life. It felt real. It's already there.
Yeah. And it's like, you look back, like, I was like, holy shit. Like, did I like manifest this or like, yeah, I don't know. It's wild.
Kind of creepy in a way. Right?
Yeah. But I do believe, like, I think it's mine is very powerful.
Yeah. Energy, wavelengths, everything that you're putting out. I mean, maybe that resonates with like the success after success, right? And like maintaining that is like, you can be successful. So like confidence perpetuates success in a lot of ways.
What are you manifesting now?
More fat tire.
Have you guys read the book, the Power Now?
No.
Really good book.
Who by?
They can
Power
look it up.
of Now.
Power Now.
Okay.
Some famous guy. But it's basically it's all about like presence, right? Like, and it's really powerful book. And it's like, basically like there's nothing else than now. Like there's no past, there's no future, And it's like, I think it's like constant practice, but if you can get in that space where it's like you truly in this moment, like it's magical when you can start getting there. It's just pure. And because it's like, I mean, we got like, it's monkey brain. Like I'm on a bike and I'm like thinking I'm like past, future, like, and like you become aware of like kind of screening your thoughts.
Yeah.
Being like aware of your thoughts, like kind of like, okay, like enough of this monkey shit. Like, okay, let's just try to be here. Like, what is the wind? What is the like smells? And it's just like, try to be more in that moment.
Do you have any like, I guess, tools or ways that you approach things now that allow you to be more present? Or is it just the conscious, like reminding yourself to be present? How does that look for you?
I think like anytime like nature is super powerful. Like if you're just going walking or mountain biking and honestly, I think like cycling is powerful for that too. Cause it does like,
I say it's my therapy,
like
man. I know that's my
if you do a hard fucking ride, following Adam ships, like it's forceful, but like you have to be in that moment, right? Because it's like there's nothing else. Like you can't do anything else.
Yeah,
you just look at that wheel and like, all right. But it's sort of like I do get in that space, like riding. I think mountain biking even more so. Super into like recently I've been getting super into snow surfing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay.
So it's like snowboarding, but no bindings and you're just riding in the powder and just going on your own in the forest and just hiking. Just everything is like slow and you just like try to enjoy the moment, like I think it's, I don't know. It's just the practice that I've been trying to get in as much as I can. And yeah, it's worth the read.
I definitely felt this when I was mountain biking, where it's one of those things where you get punished for not being present because, it's like you're out, you're riding something technical. And it's like, if you're not hyper focused in the now, it's like, that's when stuff goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. I mean, I see it so much in the inverse of when I'm road riding, where I'm riding and like my brain goes somewhere and I like come back into it and I'm like, oh, I've been spaced out for 5 miles, 6 miles.
And that's the magical feeling. Mm-hmm. And I do think like that's maybe part of like what I loved skateboarding and snowboarding. Like it allowed you to get in that space, like without knowing really like, because there's always more to just what you're doing. Like it's the feeling you're after, right? Mm-hmm.
So why San Diego? Snow sports, not big in San Diego. But there's the ocean, there's the nature.
So my first sponsor was from San Diego.
Okay.
Who is
is
it?
this?
Lamar Snowboards.
Oh, right. All right. Such a funny place to have a snowboarding company start, right?
Yeah. So he was Burt Lamar. He was a pro skateboarder, and then he started his snowboard company back in like, I don't know, 90s. And then my team manager who was at Lamar, he started his own agency. So he became my agent 2000s, and he lived in Encinitas. So I always came here. And then all the big magazines were here, like Transworld Snowboarding, Snowboarder Magazine. So there's quite a bit of a industry type of stuff was still happening here. So I would travel, and then I would like, hey, like 5 days, just come over here and cool off.
So you finally moved to San Diego then full time, or were you already living here?
Yeah, we moved here 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, and you've been here ever since.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
From Finland?
Yeah, so my she's from England.
Uh-huh.
And then we lived in Finland. And then we lived in Innsbruck for 6 months. And then we're going to move here. Originally, we're going to move to Portland.
Okay.
Because I was mostly filming in Canada, so it was easier to like go back and forth. We put an offer in a house, and then my manager was like, hey, I'm going away. Like, could you come and look after my dogs for a week? And so we flew back. We flew over here, and it had been raining, like it always rains.
Yeah.
I love Portland, but yeah, anyways, it rains a lot. And so we came, and it was just like, we were surfing. It was like we stayed in Encinitas. We were like, this is way better.
Are we making the right decision?
This is way better. Yeah. So we end up here, and then the plan was like, hey, maybe we'll rent a place somewhere. So that first year we were here, we rented a place in Tahoe. We went there, got it all set up. That was when Gabriel, my first son, was just born. Drove there, got it all set up. And then that year, Tahoe never had snow. Right. Never had snow. And I went there, I think it was March, to pick up some stuff, and left a heater on. And then like June, like we checked out of the place. And then I hadn't looked at my bills for
no.
It was like $1,000 a month for electricity because I had
left the heater on.
Like, we're not doing that anymore. So then, so I just ended up traveling. Yeah. And I traveled like so many different places. Like, so it wasn't like, the only place would have made sense was to move to like Vancouver or Squamish or Whistler. But then it was like, just don't, fell in love with this, and such a good place.
How'd you guys meet?
We met in Burton sales meeting.
Oh, all right.
She was a rep, and got a little tipsy, and that's where
start hanging out. All right. I mean, that's a pretty solid story. We won't get too deep into it, but so ever since, what year was that?
That was 2003.
Okay, so you're married for a couple of years,
and it was pretty funny. We met on a sales meeting. Burton used to have like crazy sales meetings, like
so, it
was like sending it style. Yeah. So, anyways, this one was in Burlington. That's where the Burton headquarters was, and it was like this scavenger hunt thing, bars, like bar after bar, like everybody was hammered. Yeah, this is funny. Funny times.
Are you at all like set up with the Panorama people?
Yeah. So. Friend of mine who was an Oakley team manager worked in Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't really know too much about it, but he just started flowing me stuff. But it wasn't anything official. Like he would just send me gear, and then it kind of like didn't go anywhere. Then my son was playing for the Finnish national team. They had a tournament in Oslo. So then I connected with all the, Jonas, he was on the on the team, and there was another guy, and they had like a store in Oslo, and so then he contacted them again, and so it was just like kind of like nothing's happened, but it was just always kind of being there. And then
some like informal,
and then recently, like I got in touch. They reached out to me. We started chatting, and then we sort of made this like a ambassador thing, and for me it was just like I like the brand. I like the aesthetics. I think I connect with like maybe it's just the Scandinavian thing, like. Just looks different. It feels good. It feels a little bit like maybe it's not so much from cycling space. It kind of like it's something that I can connect a little bit more.
The lifestyle.
Yeah. And it's like, and I think it's the people, and it's like, I feel like it's just a different type of community than like some of these other things. And
only the raddest dudes rep Panorama. Only the coolest people on the planet. So I've heard. I don't know.
Yeah, but and I think that was like when I got in cycling, like it was sort of like confusing because coming from skateboarding and snowboarding, it's just like
very different,
and
but
people
I feel
are different
like not
too.
as different. So this is something in cycling that I've like. One of my inspirations in starting my YouTube channel was like I was seeing skate vids and stuff like that, and I was like, this is cool. Like this is a flavor that cycling doesn't have, and I don't understand. Like there is cool shit like that going on in that sport. Why the disconnect? Like I couldn't figure out how to like marry the thing. And even then, like I'm dog shit at doing what. But I found the people that now do. I found the people that now take that and like are far more creative than I am and make it look cool.
Yeah.
And so that's such an interesting thing. Like I don't know, man. Like you as a snowboarder looking at a sport like cycling.
Yeah.
What were your initial impressions of that? It's like you see. I don't know.
Well, if you asked me 20 years ago that
exactly.
I wear spandex, I'd be like, fuck, no. Like, and so like the way I got into cycling, I mean, you could go all the way back. Like when I was a kid, like bike was like the ultimate freedom.
Yeah. You can go so far, so
fast. And
it's
funny, like, so I've been riding gravel since early 80s. How's that? Because all we had is gravel.
Oh, you have
like,
dirt
we didn't
roads.
have paved wheels.
Yeah, same thing, man.
But we had this like, you know, it's like a shitty bike. I don't think it had 3 gears, but like all the like we'd go fishing, swimming, skateboarding. But like I lived in a dirt road. But it was just bike was just the way to get to places and do cool stuff and have experience, adventure. So like that was like always like it was freedom, right? But then like the idea of like going road biking was like so foreign. And the way I got back into it was, so I've had 5 ankle surgeries and then my last surgery was here. So I had the first 4 I had in Finland and the 5th one was here. And the surgeon was a big cyclist and he was straight up. It's like, dude, if you don't start riding bikes, like you're going to be here in like 2 years. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, what do you mean? Like, stationary bike? And like it's like no, it's just I don't care, just ride bike. And I'm like, oh, I can't ride stationary bike, like I gotta go outside. Like, and then Burton had a relationship with Specialized, so they sent me a tarmac, and so I got the road bike. But then I was like, okay, like what do I wear? Like I can't wear that crap like spandex, you know. And I'm like dueling around, but it's like you have this kind of like road bike, you know, it's not like a cool bike. And then I'm wearing like some like, you know, hipster shorts. And like this is like, it was just like.
That's everybody's natural progression, by the way. Everybody starts out like, I'm not touching the light.
Yeah. And I did this one ride. A friend of mine was like pretty into it. And we did this just from Encinitas to Double Peak and got to Double Peak. And it was like just soaked like. And my shit was like, I was so wet, like, oh my, like, like hipster pants. And we got back, I'm like, this doesn't really work too well. And so it's like, then I got in, like, I think I got some Rafa stuff. And, but yeah, it was just like, just took me a while. Like you see like these guys with like, logos everywhere on their jerseys, and like for me it was like, oh wow, like these are like, it must be fast, like because to me, like if I have a sticker on a board, like I'm getting paid,
you
know. And then it's like, dude, these guys have like they all own
8 stickers on there. Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, they pay for those kits. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's a crazy different world, man. I think the cost of looking pro is, people are willing to shell out some cash to look pro, go slow,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the joke of like the dentist on the $15,000 bike, right?
Yeah, it was funny. And then my first group ride was like Swami's A ride. Like my friend of mine was like, yeah, you should come and do this ride. And I just showed up and it was like this peloton of like 50 people, like, because it used to be fast. Like it's not quite the same anymore, but it used to be fast ride.
Well, now the thug ride is the fast ride.
And then and I somehow like I've survived on the A group. And I don't know how, but like I had no clue, never ridden more than like one other person. So I was like probably like all over the map and
scaring the shit out of people. But
instantly was like, okay, hold on. Like I need to like figure this shit out. Like this is like, maybe it's just the competitive side or something like that. But it was like really instantly like, okay, all right, I need to figure this out. And yes, that's sort of like where I slowly start getting into it. And
was there competition? So, I mean, the competitive side that you're talking to, was there competition in skating and snowboarding and stuff like that? Did you see it that way at all? Even when you're doing backcountry stuff, were you guys competing to do the biggest trick, the sickest job? Like, or was it just more like it was your own style and expression? Because you said earlier it's an art form. And I feel like, the kit game and all that stuff, it kind of leads there too. It's like, it's all an art form and like a form of like expression and self-expression. You kind of find where you belong in the space of any sport.
Yeah.
And I feel like with snowboarding and skateboarding and those types of sports in particular, there is more style and self-expression. Do you feel like those gave you an avenue of self-expression in that capacity? Or was it just like, I have to do a better trick than you?
No, so like filming stuff was like you're just in the it's a collective group, so you help each other out. So you're like a group of like usually 3 riders, and like we're so synced, like we know exactly what we want to do, and like people, you're cheering for each other, like we all working for the same project, so it's like a very like it's like we're in it together,
uplifting and supportive.
Yeah. But then, like, I competed US Open and X Games and all that stuff for 10 years. And for sure, like, you show up at the X Games, like, you want to do as well as you can. But at the same time, it's like, nobody really cared. Like, it was time almost like, so snowboarding, like, you have all these different film crews. You don't really see any of your friends necessarily. But then you go to X Games and you see all your friends and you're like, we'd get smashed day before. Like everybody shows up in a contest, like, oh my God, like, oh, I'm so hangover. Like, well, like, let's like, and it was sort of like competing, but at the same time, it was like obligation. So we all kind of had to be there because of our sponsors.
Yeah. And
so it just like had a different vibe. It wasn't like competitive in that way. And it wasn't, I think it was like 2003 X Games. Like I showed up, like I would be like just riding backcountry, and I showed up at the X Games in Aspen doing practice, like, practice runs. And I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like all of a sudden it was like totally different game.
It just changed.
And I was like, oh, like, what have you been up to? It's like, oh yeah, we've been in Breckenridge for like 2 months. I'm like, what, you been training
or what? Yeah.
You've been training for this? It's like, fuck, I didn't get that memo. Like,
I was just
I'm like trying to survive the rails. Like, I'm like, holy shit. Like, this is like all of a sudden, like, that's when the script was kind of changed.
Okay.
Like, that was when Show White was coming in. Like, it was very like just focusing in that one event. And that's where I'd still like, I think I've podium my last X Games probably like 2006. So I was able to kind of navigate through that for years, but then it was like, okay, like this is like, now it's separated. And so now that's how snowboarding is. Like it's very categories. Like you're a halfpipe competitor, you're a slopestyle competitor, you're a street guy, you're a backcountry guy. Like it's sort of like these different buckets. So it's not like you can't really just do everything.
Yeah, if you're a
anymore.
backcountry guy, you're not going to show up to the X Games and start like.
No, like you have no business to be there.
Okay.
Like, period.
Have you ever pinned on a number and raced your bike?
No, I've done like BWR, but I wouldn't call it race because it was just like the first year I did it was like on tarmac on 25s.
That's aggressive.
148 miles. Like, dude, it was like survival. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I had a nerve pain in my arm for like a year. It was horrible.
Wait, so what about, let's hear more about the X Games, man. That's like, you know, watching that stuff growing up as a kid, it's always interesting to wonder like what the dynamic is behind the scenes. And as you said, you didn't really train for it. You just kind of showed up. How many times did you compete in the X Games? You
I
said
have
03
seven X Games medals.
Okay.
One US Open. I think I probably podium like 4 times in US Open. One World Champions. I don't know. And then it's like the snowboarding is so different. Like there's no like, it's sort of these individual contests. So like even the world champs are like hosted by a certain company or
Okay. Like
US
Burton World
Open
Champs or
was
whatever.
US Open, but it was like hosted by Burton. And then X Games is, you know, big, but then you have this like, we used to go these huge contests in Japan, you know, like it was like Toyota Big Air.
Okay.
And then you go to Europe and like Innsbruck or Munich, you have like Air Style. So it's all like these individual contests. But yeah, they were big. Like we'd go to Japan, like in these like giant domes, there's 50,000 people. Like it was bananas.
Did you ever get overwhelmed? Like, do you ever just watch, like 50,000 people is a lot of freaking people to be sitting in front of and like about to do the thing that you do in the backcountry with nobody watching except for a film crew?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, I think it just, honestly, like that, like competing was, it was never, like I never took it seriously. So it was never like,
Yeah, you're just there to
it
ride
was
your
like,
snowboard.
whatever, like if I podium, great. If I don't, who cares? Like, so I never like, it never felt like pressure that way because it wasn't, it was more like this like side thing. It truly was like, if it was up to me, I wouldn't showed up any of them. Like I would have just been like, so it was sort of like the obligation and like part of being a pro for Burton, because Burton was like, okay, like, you know, we need you to show up at the X Games. Like we need you on
need
the ESPN.
to be on TV, yeah.
But then you can go do this fun stuff. But it didn't feel like that wasn't like now if you're a competitor, like if you're a cyclist, you're racing, like if you're racing sucks, you're kind of like, that's it.
Yeah.
So there's like so much pressure to that like one outcome. And so I think I was very lucky that we didn't really, like it was sort of this side thing that didn't feel that.
That same pressure.
But, yeah.
It was more like you're showing up for TV time
Yeah.
to do your thing.
Yeah.
Make sponsors happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny towards the end of it, like when the US Open came, none of us wanted to go to US Open. It was in Vermont. It was like, fuck, it's icy. It's March. It's like best snow. And
That's the time when you
like
want to be
team
on the
manager would
backcountry.
call me. It's like, dude, I don't know. Like, I think I like my ankle's like not so good. And like, and it was Rene, his name Rene, team manager. He's like, dude, Jeremy already told me that. Like I already done like it. I don't care.
All your
like
ankles.
you're coming here.
Yeah.
I don't care if you come in like wheelchair, but you're coming in. And it's like, all right. And then we all compete. And like,
All of a sudden, everyone on the team had an ankle injury a week before the U.S. Open.
Everybody shows up in wheelchairs. Yeah, we're ready to go.
yeah, it was, I think it was, I don't know, 2003 or 4. I beat Sean at the X Games in slopestyle.
Damn.
And yeah, Sean was so pissed. And I remember like walking up to the podium and he was just like, oh, man. I'm like, dude, like, wait, like, dude, you got years of this shit. Like, I'm out. And like my wife told Sean, it's like, dude, it's okay. It's character building. And Sean just looked at Zoe like, you like, I was like, dude, you're going to go and do great things. Like, let me have this. And I'm out.
Give me one, bro, and I'm dipping. So looking at like, I guess the future of your life, you know, 2 great kids, right? You've basically raised them at this point. You guys are soon enough. What's your second oldest? Is
So
how old is he?
Theo is the youngest one. He's 16, and Gabriel is 17.
So they're about gone. And so then you're going to be empty nesting, hanging out, you and your wife. What are you guys going to do, man?
It's weird, dude. It's so weird.
Did I just touch the nerve? You don't know what you're going to do.
It's really weird. Like it is like, it's, you're sort of like, you go through these stages with your kids and it's like, it's mayhem. And then like you get them through and then you start looking back, like you miss them being little because it's like, in a way, it's the best time ever, but you kind of miss some of that because it's so hectic. And then, yeah, and all of a sudden, like they're adults. Like my older son, like he's turning 18 and he's pretty much like, he's got a girlfriend, lives on his own apartment. And like, I was like, who is this guy? Like, yeah, so I don't know. It's going to be kind of it's exciting too. Like just because I think we've put so much energy to these kids and like really like we've, that's what you do, and you put things on hold. So like there's a lot of things that you look forward to, like traveling, and we definitely want to spend time in Europe. Not like we want to live here, but like just spend time Europe and just be free, lose. Yeah. So I don't know.
Free and lose. Yeah. I mean, no, that sounds important because I feel like you were during your career as an athlete, you're kind of controlled by the sponsorship realm of things. Now, doing photography and marketing and things like that for brands, you're sort of at the freedom to accept the projects you want to, but at the same time, you still got to pay bills.
Yeah.
And so now it seems like you are getting back to some of that freedom that you first found in snowboarding, right?
Yeah, it is fun. Like, and the photography space is super fun. Like there's a lot of like the space I work in is pretty wide. It's like mostly like, I guess, active outdoor space. But then I do a lot of like even food stuff and like just random stuff. But yeah, it's fun. And I've been very lucky to have clients that I've pretty like steady. I've been working with them for years. So it's like good flow with kind of flow work too. So it's like, it's pretty consistent. And yeah, it's been fun doing some bike stuff too. I did all the NV stuff. We did melee, we did MOG, I did the SES stuff, and that was cool too because it's like I'm not saying like we did anything incredible, but it's like maybe just doing it a little bit different, So just bringing some of that and pushing my photography too. Like I want to keep constantly like learning, and I think that's a beautiful thing about something like this too. It's like you never like perfect. You haven't reached to a point. Like you're always constantly trying to like
evolve,
learn, and like figure out new ways. And yeah, and that's really cool. It's sort of like what skateboarding. You're never like your best. Like you're constantly moving forward.
If you had a project that is like the project that you were going to work on, and like the creative endeavor of your life, what is it?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I honestly, like, I don't know. I in some ways I feel like I've been so lucky that I've been able to do. Like I just did a campaign out in like Eastern Sierras where we're just like fishing and doing cool stuff. Like I felt like, man, this is like so cool. Like I get to be here where I love and doing shit with my friends. And so I some levels I feel like I'm already doing it. I don't know if there's anything particular. I'd love to shoot, like I always had this idea. It's nothing like insane, but I love to shoot cycling in like Norway when it's like mountains, rainy, super misty, just like really harsh weather. And also like, I think it's like living, like going through those motions, like maybe doing like something hardship, like riding like 2 weeks or not maybe 2 weeks, but like maybe a week where you're just like having this experience, you're riding through like some amazing country and like just like thinking back to snowboarding when you're going on trips with friends, but it's like also work, like trying to captivate that like feeling. Like I think that something like that would be super rad.
Have you ever heard of Bright Midnight? You should look it up. I think it's in. Do you know Bright Midnight?
I haven't heard of it. No.
I think it's a race in Norway. It's 800 miles, and it's like self-supported bike packing.
That would be sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as far as like biking goes, that's the type of stuff I want to do too.
Yeah.
Like way more like kind of like that a hotel type of backpacking. Yeah,
The bike packing with.
it's just like you have shit on your bike, you got everything you need, but like you could stay in hotels, moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just find like hopping from one to
like
another,
Europe,
riding
like
100 miles between.
How cool would be like do like 2 weeks in Europe? Mm-hmm. Oh, it'd be so sick.
I was talking about so do you know who Chris Burkhardt is?
Yeah, so he was one of our advocates for Mizu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, his stuff is so sick and he's like inspired me to go to Iceland. So
Yeah.
I want to go in like August, September, and I just want to go like take the gravel bike and just go rip for like 2 weeks, a few 100 miles and just like ride. It just looks like the landscape's so badass. And like, that's the kind of stuff that's just cool.
Yeah. And I think that's what biking is so amazing. Like it's what you can see and experience. Like sometimes even like stupid it is, like we ride in Rancho Santa Fe all the time. It's like same old shit. But like this spring, like all the like flowers and it's like
Super
you're
bloom.
hitting like it's like, dude, it's so sick. Just having like that hour, 2 hours of like it's like hits you, let alone like going somewhere new, like when I was in Norway, I did all these gravel rides. I did this one like 100-mile ride and it was just epic. Like just these killer dirt roads, like no traffic, like all gated. And you just roll up at this lake and it's like these perfect waffles and coffee. And I'm like, what the, like, I'm like 50 miles from Oslo and like, so cool.
I've always thought about like my bike as like as a tool where it's like, it allows me to do all of these. Like there's nothing about a bike that is like special to me other than the fact that it like allows me to do all of these other things, So it's like, it allows me to, it's been like this avenue for me to travel, or it's like, it is this time that like is this like forced meditation, right? Or,
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's like, has always like kept me in cycling is that it's like, it is this super useful tool where it's like, oh, you want to see the world? Like, oh, you want to meet people, you want to experience nature, you want to like find this like break from your regular life, like whatever you kind of need it to do, it can do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's kept me in the sport for so long is like, I always like want to keep coming back to those things. And there's like something that like weirdly has become irreplaceable. Cycling has like made itself irreplaceable in my life where I'm like, I don't know how I would do all those things without it.
Yeah, it centers you in the moment, keeps you grounded, all those things.
It just keeps you healthy too.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, is health important to you? You want to live a long life.
I'd be
right?
like 180 pounds now if I
few too many fat tires maybe here and there.
Never too many.
Never too many. Well, I love that, man. It sounds like you've had a hell of a career and you've got a hell of a career to still go. A lot of photography and creative outlets. And I think it's cool to hear how somebody can go from a sport that's maybe not like the endurance athletics realm, that's not traditional in the sense of like, you go to the Olympics, you go to the MLB, you go to the NFL, and like still have like a competitive relationship with it, but the passion is what drives it. I think it's just like a really unique, take on sport in general. So we appreciate you sitting down and hanging out.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Is there anything that you want to like plug? Anyone you want to thank?
Adam just told me to give props for Adam.
Oh,
so
Adam
okay.
Chefs. Adam Chefs. All right.
And then
should we put
Lola.
Adam's? Another Adam.
We'll do an Adam Chefs.
That's it.
I like how he's infiltrated the podcast in every episode at this point.
You're never gonna have him on a podcast.
No.
He's just gonna be the legend.
Yeah, he's like the boogeyman. You know he exists somewhere out there.
He's like a mascot. You just have his face on.
Well, shit, usually we appreciate it, man. And honestly, like, so happy to have met you doing a shoot. Like, that's how this stuff comes to fruition. So Yeah, man. Let's stay in touch. We'll ride together. We'll go ripping around. You got to ride with this dude too. He'll blow your freaking legs off.
I've hered.
Yeah.
From Adam Sheps.
Yeah. The rumors.
Oh, classic. All right. Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
Get it.